everybody. Welcome to a new episode of my so-called Xennial Life with no hair and bad lighting, as always. But that's part of the charm of this show, is the low-quality affair. At least that's what I'll keep telling myself anyway. But can you believe that summer is over? I haven't done an extreme amount of summer activity, except for the beach and a visit to a friend out in Missouri. Hi, my buddy. But I did go to a couple concerts, Springsteen back in August, and in July I went to another concert that influenced me for this episode, all about glam metal. So buckle up, get your hairspray and spandex, which I am never going to wear ever in my life, didn't then, will not now, as we travel back to the 1980s, again, because, I go back to the 80s a lot, and relive the glory days of glam metal. Well, here's a Wikipedia definition, even though I will shorten it a lot. Glam metal, also known as hair metal and pop metal, is a subgenre of heavy metal that features pop-influenced hooks and guitar riffs, upbeat rock anthems, and slow power ballads. Early glam metal evolved directly from the glam rock movement of the 1970s, as visual elements taken from such acts as the New York Dolls and David Bowie were fused with more heavy metal leanings and theatrics from the acts of Alice Cooper and Kiss. The first example of this fusion began appearing in the 1970s and early 1980s in the United States, particularly on the Los Angeles Sunset Strip music scene. Early glam metal bands include Motley Crue, a band my sister Charlene liked a lot, Rat, Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister, and Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi, which in my opinion was probably the most popular band in this genre. Glam metal achieved significant commercial success from approximately 1983 to 1991. From a strictly visual perspective, glam metal is defined by flashy and tight-fitted clothing, makeup, and the overall androgynous aesthetics such as spandex, lace, and the usual heavy use of bright colors. Today they would be considered drag queens, most likely. There was a lot of music that I liked more than glam, but the genre does have a special place in my heart, as you just couldn't escape it back in the 80s. Sure, Madonna and Michael Jackson played a lot, but glam metal was very popular. In my experience, Motley Crue, Poison, and Bon Jovi were the big three, since they were played more often. For me, I guess Bon Jovi and Motley Crue were the ones I listened to the most. I mean, I did take my sister's Motley Crue CD, the Dr. Feelgood album, without her knowing, so please don't tell her, I don't want her getting pissed at me. Anyway, the music was also associated a lot with the notion of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as I do remember many of their music videos being a little sleazy and sexist, but hey, that was all part of the charm back then. In my opinion, I would say Poison, Wasp, and Motley Crue were the worst offenders in that. A lot of the songs that I do remember from these groups were called power ballads, which are more softer and quote-unquote more heartfelt songs, usually dealing with love. One such song I did actually like was Poison's Something to Believe In, as I remember it being played a lot when it came out in 1990. The song's not really a love song, but it is a bit more sentimental and kind of heartfelt. Anyway, while I knew many of the groups and liked several songs, I just wasn't into it, and partially because I didn't develop a musical taste until I was a teenager, and by then glam metal had suffered a decline in popularity in the early mid-1990s. At that time, that was when I started listening to grunge, which I think was the big music genre that destroyed hair metal. But besides me listening to grunge, I also liked industrial music like Nine Inch Nails, along with the traditional thrash metal groups like Metallica and, of course, Slayer. Yeah, sure, I did listen to glam metal, but it just wasn't something that I listened to the most compared to other groups. So, why am I talking about this type of music, even though I was into more of a metal and grunge scene? Well, back in July of this year, I went to a concert that featured a few glam metal acts. The first one to play at this concert was John Corabi. While it was a solo act, he was the lead singer of Motley Crue from 1994 to 1997. I do remember back then when Motley Crue replaced their lead singer, but I didn't know the person's name until recently. He did an acoustic act with just him and his guitar and frequently talked to the audience. He was actually quite good, but just different from the other more rock acts. I mean, it was just really just him and his guitar. But you know what? I actually liked it. After that was, well, Winger, who I do remember back in the 80s, especially from their single 17, which came out in 1989, so I would have been 10. Although I do remember their power ballad Miles Away. I'll say this now, they sounded great and in my opinion put on the best performance of that night. Finally, there was Tom Kiefer, who was the lead singer of the group Cinderella. He's now with his own band as the original Cinderella broke up and likely will most likely never be a reunion, especially after the death of guitarist Jeff LaBar back in 2021. He sounded really good and he had a lot of energy, since I am aware he had some vocal cord issues in the past. Anyway, I vaguely remember him in Cinderella back in the day, although I do remember their power ballad, of course, remember the power ballad, Nobody's Full and You Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, being played here and there on the radio and MTV. Although I recorded many snippets of the performances, I didn't have my cell phone on constantly and only recorded maybe a minute or two at a time, as I really wanted to focus on the concert itself. It's the same thing I did with Korn, I would have it out for a little bit and record quite a bit, except for those couple songs that I really, really liked. I just felt like having my phone out in front of my face too much really ruins the experience of going to a concert, so this time I really scaled it back. Anyway, here's some footage of that concert right now.
Sing it with me. Just sleep deep. Oh, what can it be to a daydream reliever and a homecoming queen? Will you want?
say that was a really good concert. I have yet to been to a concert that I hated. They're definitely one of my top favorites, but Korn has always been my favorite, and Slipknot has always been my favorite concerts I've seen, but they're up there. And I've actually, if I've seen Winger or Cinderella or any of these other glam metal bands performing again, I would 100% go and see them. Having said that, a few bands you might have noticed in my report and even in the video I did not mention, such as Skid Row and Guns N' Roses. There are some people who do consider them to be glam or hair metal. I personally do not. I consider them to be more like hard rock, and I would even say with Guns N' Roses to be sort of like sleaze rock, a little bit of thrash rock in it. So no, I do not consider Skid Row and Guns N' Roses to be hair metal at all. Well, that's it for this episode. In the comments, why don't you tell me about your favorite glam metal band? Mine has always been sort of like, as I mentioned earlier, Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, but I want to hear about yours, and what song do you remember back from the 80s that really touched your heart? There's Joey. As many of you have noticed, I have done a lot more short videos, including posting concert footage of Bruce Springsteen. Expect more of those in the future. They're just very easy for me to do to keep the algorithm and trying to do frequent updates. This video took me quite a while to do because of all the clips and stuff like that, but hopefully it pays off in you and you all give me a like, subscribe, and share. Anyway, bye for now and see you soon.